hello everyone. So before we start, I have a quick question. Who of you is using AI in production currently in your organizations? Okay, couple of hands. And who of you can tell me, like your last interaction with AI, can you tell me what context it used, what it cost, and whether the answer was maybe biased? Not too many hands, yeah, there, yeah, I'm seeing something. So yeah, here's the thing, it's of course nothing new, right? Like every major shift in software development follows the same pattern basically, right? We get the new technology, we rush to deploy it, and a couple of years later we ask ourselves, okay, wait a minute, who is actually in charge here, right? So with AI, it's pretty much the same thing currently. Let me make it a little bit more concrete. So imagine a visitor coming on a website, finding an answer, and this answer is wrong or biased or, you know, not compliant. Like, who do you call? Who do you keep accountable about that? So my name is Paulina. I'm commercial director at Dropsolid AI, and together with Tassos, we want to talk today a little bit about, you know, not less AI, but the AI that is more accountable and more grounded. Yeah, and I think I have to use the slides as well. That would be helpful. So yeah, AI changes everything, we know that. And this is basically what I said, that, you know, what we need is a transparent way to steer our AI and not be steered by it. This is us, obviously. And up to you, Tassos.
So basically, what does transparent AI mean? Just to look at that, we need to go back and understand that the modern AI-enabled application is more complex than what applications used to be. But the stack shouldn't be complex enough if we are looking for organizations beyond the IT services to adopt this, right? And that stack should be a technical stack that allows organizations to retain the control over their systems, their decision-making process, and their data. So what does it mean? First of all, it doesn't need to have technical complexity. It needs to enable transparency, autonomy. It needs to be secure and compliant. And also it needs to provide value to the organization. And in the era of AI, that is through context. So there is a key question, Paulina, today. What is possible with AI? We're just going to lightly surface a few case studies that we see out in the wild that are being winning, let's say, or more prevalent.
Yeah, so we identified a couple of use cases that resonate well with our clients, but we want to focus today on a particular one, which we called Instant Answer Engine. So right now, you know, many websites are looking for, like many visitors are looking for an answer somewhere on a website. And this answer exists in a PDF, on, you know, on a policy page, maybe on the product, in a product sheet, right? So, but people can't find those answers quite often. So they call or they send an email, and it costs something between 8 and 15 euro every single time. And if you multiply it by the amount of contacts that you get over the months, it's not a content problem, it's money problem, basically, at the end. So the idea of the instant answer engine is very simple. Let visitors have a conversation with your content, not a chatbot that makes things up, but really a tool that pulls cited answers directly from your approved content. Grounded, traceable, accountable. And the results speak basically from themselves. So we implemented this solution for a couple of clients. The European Personal Selection Office, which is one of the EU largest recruitment bodies, reduced the incoming questions by 70%. Actually, this number is wrong because this week or last week we had an update and this number increased to 90%. Like, imagine decreasing the questions that are coming to your team by 90%. If you take 100,000, you know, inquiries per year, you reduce it by 90,000. It's really a massive number. Then also Antwerp University Hospital, they increased the answer accuracy something between 55 to 91%. Like, you can imagine what kind of gains it was for them. And also another client of ours, Pitpa, reported similar numbers. So these are not pilot cases. These are deployed solutions.
So I have the solution architecture up here. I'm going to talk in more detail later, just to give you like a real understanding. But essentially, the journey of a user, an end user, into this is through asking, and then, as you can see, there's this whole orchestration of AI components that goes on. Eventually, at some point, the visitor gets an answer, and what this is about is how you can get tracking on the usage and the model cost, how you can understand what was the input, the context, and the output of the model, how you can evaluate the performance and the quality of your systems and the answers they give, how you can incorporate feedback loops from the end user, but also how you can get like human in the loop questions and feedback loops from experts, and finally how you can fine-tune this. So that begs the question, essentially, how to retain control over the systems, the data, and decision-making process. So let me just back up for a second here and get everybody in the same picture. So the old way of thinking of software, or the legacy way of thinking of software, is that it is a system. You give it a set of input, you expect a set of output. In fact, if you don't get the expected output, that's probably a bug. So you go back, you sort of like fix that bug, you give that the set of inputs, and then you assess that it actually gives you what you expect. You deploy that application into production, and off you go. So that is not the case anymore, because AI-enabled applications are becoming increasingly complex. It means that they are using autonomous agents, they are incorporating reasoning, they are calling external tools on its own, they are managing their own context, they use multiple AI models, and all sorts of other factors. So we went, in a scientific speak, we went from deterministic models into probabilistic models. And without having the mechanisms to understand what is happening within the application, the AI-enabled application, essentially, someone is operating a black box. And that is where they lose the ability to steer the AI, and that's when you can't, as an organization, anymore control the decision-making process, the systems, and the data. And even worse than that is you may be introducing other parameters and characteristics to your experience, to the end users, but also to society, with compliance risk, biases, and all sorts of other stuff that may be coming, and you don't have any way of understanding whether these are true or not if you are on a black box situation. So what you rather have is what we call a glass box, or a transparent way to understand this. Understand what the application does, why it does it, for whom it does it, when it does it, and so on, right? So also, when you are in a transparent situation, you have the ability to evaluate the application for accuracy, for performance, for toxicity in its answer, simplicity on the answer, and all other parameters. And also you have a process that you can influence the operation of that application towards where you want it to be, rather than when the biases of the AI models incline it to be. So this is essentially the same graph as before. This type of architecture tries to answer some of those questions. There are more questions that you would have at different times. But basically, a visitor or an internal user performs a request that reaches the AI-enabled application, and then that input and context would be sent to an AI provider, who would then, at the end of the day, query an LLM model. The LLM itself may need some extra context from a vector database, but ultimately it will create an answer, and that answers through the provider would find its way to the user, right? So how would an admin calculate what was the cost of that answer, or how many tokens it consumed, or whether that answer was correct, or whether that answer was simple enough, if that was a KPI, or whether that answer was accurate enough, or whether they want to give that answer back to compliance and legal and say, we are happy with that answer. There are ways that you can do that. So this is essentially the same graph. I just split it into user space and system space, just focus on the system space. Essentially, it's exactly the same life cycle of a request. The only difference is the tracing mechanism. And you see that between the AI provider and the AI-enabled applications, you have another system. It's called the tracing system, observability system. We used to have in IT systems like this, log-type systems for a long, long time. But this is about tracing. And what a trace is it's an observable segment between an operation of an end user and an LLM. And what it does, what that trace is it captures the input, the context, and the output of the LLM and everything that went through generating that answer. So that's where an internal user would spend their time if they want to inspect, monitor, understand, and influence the AI operation for the organization. But when you do get into that architecture, there's another key opportunity that arises, because when you can track and measure and evaluate, then you are able to understand the context of that request and the context of the user itself. And for organizations, that context is the domain knowledge where they themselves and their customers and users are operating. So having like mechanisms to start understanding and quantifying that is really, really important. It gives competitive advantages. So next to the tracing, you'll see in this, you'll see context. That's where contextual intelligence sort of like comes up as a concept. It just means that you have the mechanisms to understand that structured domain-specific knowledge that is embedded within the platform, within your business model, within your customer service support, and everything that is touching upon through experience with an end customer. So you may ask, so what? What is that? Why is that important, right? So what it means for a company is that it can infuse the AI, when you capture that context, is that it can infuse the AI models with that knowledge. And that, in essence, teaches the AI what the company knows, so AI can act on behalf of the company in a meaningful way. And the reason that that is important is because as AI becomes more prolific, more and more companies will have access to the same type of models, the same type of public data. But it's the companies that they could infuse their own DNA into the models and their own unique data and unique context that they will be creating the competitive advantages for the future. So that's why it's important. So essentially, at Dropsolid, we are building the platform on that level and with that in mind, so to provide all of that. But also, we have an approach for companies that would like to adopt this into going further.
Yes, so we also found out, of course, that basically, going live with everything at the same day doesn't make any sense, and it's also not comfortable for the organizations and clients. So what we are doing, we are having this gated approach where we identify 3 different gates, and we are following this path while launching the project. So, for an official, first we do normally the discovery phase as usual to just find out what we actually wanna develop and wanna provide. And then we go through those steps like proof of technical feasibility, of course. So does it work? Does it integrate? Is it stable? And also initial proof of compliance. Is it safe to operate? Can you explain it, right? So does it fit the expectations of different departments, like legal, regulatory, or ethical boundaries as well? So it's like, a kind of internal sandbox where people can play around and check if this is what they actually want to have. And then we move to the second gate for the first external exposure, where we go through the steps of proof of value and proof of costs. So we check if, can we deliver and measure the value, and also can we manage, predict, and control the cost, which is most likely very important point for each organizations implementing this type of solutions. Yeah, and finally, we move to the gate 3, where we go for the full public deployment with proof of scale and proof of trustworthiness, where we check how does it work at scale, does it work at scale, how can we improve, how can we iterate, yeah, and how basically can we sustain responsible operations at scale, maintaining human oversight, transparency, and trust. I think it's important to say that there is always a human in the loop. So this is how we operate, and we still have 3 minutes, which is great. We prepared a very short AI barometer survey. So if you would like to...
It's a 5-question, less than a minute. If you want to scan this, and you can sort of like capture the strategy, the data assessment and everything in your organization in a scale 1 to 5. We're going to analyze the results. If you would like us to send them to you, you can optionally leave your email at the end. We're going to make a blog post anyway about it, so you don't have to give us your email, by the way. And that's the only reason we will use it for GDPR purposes, just so you know. Yeah, I mean, have a minute, fill in the survey, and we are open to questions as well.